All right, so day 3 of first impressions, respect. As you might recall, we are hitting these emotions in order. Respect, while tremendously important, is unfortunately something that people can put too close to the front. Respect, when put too early, is the person who immediately upon meeting you starts to talk about their credentials or hands you their business card with a very impressive bank or some kind of company on it in order to make you feel that they are smart or superior in some way. Respect is valuable, but if you put it first and you forget about trust and respect, it makes you look just kind of like a try-hard jerk. So day 1 and 2 are critical for this. It can take just a few seconds to be fun with a smile, to shake someone's hand, to generate trust in that eye contact, and now we're actually ready to move into generating respect. And if you think of the people that you respect in your life, there's probably a lot of different reasons why you do. Now, one, you might respect someone who is just higher up than you, right? If you've ever been low man on the totem pole or low woman in the totem pole at a company, the person who is the president or the CEO immediately makes you feel differently than the person who is of the same level. Additionally, if you see someone and they're winning, they're an achiever, they're constantly doing something at a high level that you really think is valuable, whether it's a sport, it's a debate contest, whatever it is, they're going to earn your respect as well. Sometimes it can come through in very silly things, and I've seen men do this when they talk about sports. And there's one guy that knows the stat line for every single player, and as they argue over who should be traded where, he's just got this wealth of knowledge to pull from, and he's shutting people down, telling them who's correct and why this person couldn't possibly be traded to this team. That person in that environment is generating respect. They know a lot. They have power. And then, of course, we've all felt it. When you walk down the street and you see a guy or a girl who is dressed to the nines, they just look sharp, not sleazy, but they're on their game, well, they have your respect. Now, all of these different situational forms of respect are real, but you can't generate them every single time. You might not always be dressed perfectly, and you certainly are not going to be at the top of every single hierarchy you ever step into in your life. Even if you're the CEO of the company, when you step onto that sports team, you're low man on the totem pole. So what is the kind of respect that you can bring with you wherever you go, even if you're the person at the bottom, even if you're not dressed to the nines? That is respect that comes from how you conduct yourself in conversation. It comes from the respect of how clear you are on who you are and in demonstrating your values to other people. To illustrate this point, there was a time in my life where I really struggled to generate respect, and it was when I was a consultant. Because I could go out, I could interact with people, it'd be fun, they would trust me, but when it came to asking what I did, I inevitably would sound deflated because I was a consultant. I'd be, oh, I'm a consultant, but try to move on to the next thing. And while conversation could stay fun and I might have the trust of this person, I could feel palpably that they never really respected me. It wasn't that they disliked me, it wasn't that they hated me, but I was never someone who was unique, special, or had any sort of unique value to give. And what shifted in my life was two things that made this from something that was an area where I just couldn't seem to get any respect in these conversations to something that came naturally. The first was while I was a consultant. I switched just as an experiment to say, you know what, I don't like consulting, but what if instead, when we're talking about what we do, I talk about the things that I'm passionate about? So I would just test it out. I'd go out and people would say, what is it that you do? I say, well, do you mean in the daytime or something that I really care about and I'm passionate about that I'm working on in the evenings? And they'd inevitably say, well, how about both? I'd say, well, in the day, I'm a consultant, but when I come home, I'm actually working on this internet business. I don't know if you've ever heard of parkour, but I've started a company that is training people on how to do parkour. That was actually my first business. And immediately, there was a different interest because of the way that I felt about consulting versus parkour was communicating to that person that this was intriguing, and it was obvious through follow-up questions that I was getting clear on what mattered to me, on what I valued. And so when that person would ask questions of me, they would find out that I was not only clear on what it was that I valued, but I was beginning to start in my life to live it, to embody it. And things got even easier for me in terms of respect when I finally quit my job. I moved onto Ben's floor. I was sleeping on the floor. I was poor. I had no money coming in. But all of a sudden, respect seemed to flow more easily. And when I reflect back on these early conversations, they go something like this. The person would ask me, hey, what are you up to? What do you do? And I'd laugh. I'd say, I'm fun employed. And they go, wait, unemployed? I say, no, I'm fun employed because I'm having fun. And they would laugh about it. And then they say, but what are you up to? And I would go into how I was starting this business around social skills, how I just quit my job because it wasn't satisfying to me. And I felt like there was more. And I was looking forward to moving to Brazil in 6 months. In those moments, I felt a tremendous amount of respect coming forward, and that was evidenced by the fact that they would continue to ask me follow-up questions, be interested in what I was doing, and eventually, of those people, there were many in my life, 4 of them wound up quitting their jobs, their school, and moving to Brazil with me. That was the degree of power that it had to be clear on who I was, what I valued, and then in living it. So, for you, what we need to figure out is what it is that you value. This comes down to who you are. When you think about who you are, it's not just the job that you have, it's not the clothes that you wear, it's not the position that you have in whatever company, it's the things that are important to you. And that is evidenced not just in what you say, because that is important, but it's also how you live. If you say that you care about creativity, but you have this boring job that is pure drudgery, you're not going to be able to generate the same amount of respect. So this isn't something that you can transform completely overnight. We want to get clear in the next action step section on how to communicate your values, but you also are going to want to reflect, and this is increasingly going to be part of the confidence module, on how you can shift your actions and your behaviors to match your values. That's not just for other people, by the way. This is what makes you feel a degree of self-esteem that shoots through the roof.